All right, record. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon if you're joining us from the East Coast. Welcome to the Kansas City and regional and national, and who knows, maybe international virtual community group, user group, whatever nomenclature you want to use. Welcome. Happy Thursday. I am Dale Ziegler. By day, I am a senior business analyst with 7 Summits, and my partner in crime, Jeff Berger, is the Salesforce admin at Academy Bank. He, I believe, is on PTO today, so he may dial in. I will probably be running this solo, though, but Jeff and I are your leaders here. Happy to answer any questions in between meetings and along the way, share content, all that good stuff. So as I mentioned at the very top, we are recording this. We're going to post to YouTube probably this evening, definitely before this weekend, before I go on PTO. But if you're not allowed to be recorded, if you're not comfortable being recorded, please drop now. But like I said, we will post it and share it on YouTube, as well as this deck, which we have quite a few links in here. So don't worry. Yes, you'd be missing the live experience, but you're not out of it completely. So if you can't be recorded, please drop now. And conference call etiquette. I think we've all done this a million times by now in the last 4 months. Please just mute yourself when it's time for Q&A or you have something to say. Absolutely, speak up, unmute. But in the meantime, just stay muted. Thank you so much to our repeat sponsor, OwnBackup. Luke, Leanne, Hudson, Kevin came to Kansas City a couple of years ago. I don't know that he's going to be joining us on this call, but OwnBackup, a really solid product. I know several of you are actually customers. They're doing some really good things for all of us in the Salesforce ecosystem, and we appreciate them giving back to the community. And they'll have more details, but they're going to be doing a raffle as well. So thank you for sponsoring and presenting and being part of this today. We've had this going for a few months now, but we do have a Kansas City User Group Slack channel. Go ahead and send an email to our general queue there if you would like to be added. We'll get you added as soon as possible. It's a great place to collaborate locally, ask any questions you might have about any issues you have, any fun articles, any whatever you want to share. We're keeping it confined to the local community, so it's tight-knit. So we are not the only user group here in Kansas City. We are technically called the administrators group. I'm fighting Salesforce hard to get that officially changed back to community group or user group or something that isn't just admins, because we welcome our developers, we welcome our nonprofiters, we welcome our marketers, women in tech, any other. If we have students, would love to see students. I know KU, K-State, I believe Mizzou, they are starting to grow in the Salesforce space. This is a safe place for everybody in the metro, in the region, whoever wants to join. But there are more groups for the more specialized things like developers and WIT and marketers. Some upcoming news and notes about those groups. Our next group, save the date, is Thursday, August 13th. Once I have all the details officially ironed out, we'll send out a registration, the link to the registration site. But definitely mark your calendars for Thursday the 13th. And again, we're sharing this deck with the link in here, but if you are interested in speaking and presenting, we would love to have you. Love, 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 love. These meetings don't happen without what you all are doing, whether it's presenting your company's use case, something fun that you built, some insights, whatever. We would love to host you, have this forum, give you the ability to speak about what you're passionate about. Do we have any of the other user group leaders on the call, or any from outside of Kansas City? Go ahead and raise your hand in the chat. Scrolling through here, I don't see any hands going up or recognize any names. Okay, no problem. Do we have any Salesforce employees on the call? No? Okay. So some community resources and events. The first one that I always like to call out because I'm on the team is MVP office hours. Normally we meet the first and third Friday of every month for open at 1 p.m. Open questions, anything coming up with releases, issues you're having in your org, whatever. MVPs don't always answer the questions. You don't have to be an MVP to answer. Sometimes MVPs are asking the questions. It just says MVP because it's one of the things that we do to host an open call for anybody to help anybody. So if you'd like to join, even just to listen in, gain insights, or if you want to give back with your knowledge, please go register at bit.ly/MVPOHUS. It'll be tomorrow at 1, and then like I said, normally first and third Friday. We're shifting this month because of the holiday weekend last weekend, so it'll be 10th and 24th this month. But we'd love to see you. I know some of you are already joining us and love having you. Obviously, everything is virtual in terms of conferences and the big events and everything. But those links, the World Tour, Salesforce events, community events, mentorship, all of those, they are always up and active. Highly encourage you to go check out when there's going to be webinars or virtual events like TDX a couple of weeks ago. I know Salesforce is trying to cook up some good stuff for Dreamforce, I believe in September this year, but virtually. I do also especially want to call out the mentorship link here. This is if you are interested in being a mentor or if you're someone looking for a mentor. This program's been going for about 6 or 7 months where they try to align on skill sets and relative experience, and it's a really great program. I've had a couple of mentees assigned to me that I was able to do resume reviews, a couple of mock interviews, just schedule a call every couple of weeks and just say, hey, how you doing? How can I maybe help guide you? If you want to be on either end of that kind of a relationship, I highly encourage the Trailblazer Mentorship Program. And then, of course, Idea Exchange. I think prioritization is closed for right now, but the Idea Exchange is always up and running, and they'll have information on future prioritization efforts. Salesforce does listen to us. They really do. I know some of the ideas have been out on the back burner for a while. There's a lot of us who are crying for, if you can't make it happen, why not? Give us the why, and we'll at least be able to sit with that. But it's a great forum for you to be able to have your voice heard for future growth in Salesforce. Summer 20, we are in the thick of it. We have 2 more release weekends, one this weekend and then the last one next weekend. If you haven't read the release notes yet, guilty. There's a link to them out there, as well as status.salesforce.com, to not only get any current outages, or uptime or anything like that, but future maintenance, which includes when is my production org, when are my sandboxes going to the next release. Status.salesforce.com is always the place to go. Release overview webinars kicked off on Tuesday, I believe, and are ongoing. So definitely go check those out at bit.ly webinar summer 20. Certification maintenance exams. We've talked about this every month, but they have relaxed the requirements for the maintenance. It's now once a year, but you still don't want to lose sight of it. So there's a link embedded in there that takes you to the Trailhead site that talks about the requirements, when the deadlines are, everything that you need to know. And then for everything release, and again, I'm going to share this deck later with the links. This Success Community Group, Trailblazers Community Group, should be resource number 1 to get live updates of what's going on when. Just set your email settings to daily digest. Weekly, you're going to miss a lot. If you do every, you're going to get flooded. So daily is kind of the sweet spot with that group. And this is my favorite part. Everybody knows this. Go ahead and raise your hand in the chat if this is your first time in our meeting or in any user group meeting. Anyone? Bueller? That's okay. Do we have any new roles, any new jobs, any job openings, anything to share? Oh, Pearl, have your hand raised. Here, let me unmute you.
I'm new to the group. It's my first time. I'm from San Francisco.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this early and from the West Coast, and happy to have you.
Thank you so much.
Any job information to share from
Yeah, we
anybody?
got, I can plug it later as well, but we've got a new business analyst, business consultant, Salesforce lead that we're looking for at DEG. So hit up
Awesome.
DEG's website, degdigital.com, go to the career section. It should have just been posted, I think, yesterday.
Awesome. Very good. I'll do the same plug for 7 Summits. I know we have a handful. We're looking for a BA. We're looking for, I think it's some tech leads, 7summits.com/careers. And I'll share that link out after as well. For those, whether it's DEG, 7 Summits, those looking for consulting roles, they are definitely out there. All right, certifications, my super duper favorite part. Who's studying, who's passed, who's failed, who's doing what? Anybody? All right, no problem. As we have mentioned, obviously with testing centers being shut down, or if they are open, it's probably limited capacity. It actually is pretty easy to take a certification exam online from home. They have suspended the requirement for the second webcam, so that does make things a little bit easier. Time slots are kind of hard to come by, just because they do actually have an online proctor, but sign up at, oh, I should have been reading the chat. That's where everybody's celebrating. Sorry. I'll get to those in a second. They do have an online proctor. I would say if you are ready to take an exam, log in every day, because you never know when there might be cancellations and you can potentially get a slot that day. So just always keep your eye on WebAssessor to find slots. So let me run through the chat here. Pearl, we heard you. Kim Watt, welcome. Daniel, new job. What are you doing right now?
Sorry, Cloud One picked up a 6-week contract, and they like me so much they asked me to stay. So pretty sweet deal. It's entirely work from home because they're in Seattle and I'm in Kansas City. So
very nice.
That's nice.
Congratulations.
High five right there. Thank you.
Boom. Sorry if I high-fived anybody's face, but high five. Dara passed my admin cert yesterday. Sweet. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Kim, studying for admin. Good luck. You have a whole group here of people that I know would love to give tips and pointers and point you in the right direction. Let's see. Yeah, awesome. Love hearing that. And I call out this question of here of who tried and failed, because again, this is a very safe place. We love celebrating the failed tests. Anybody? Bueller? All right, no problem. All right. Getting close to the end of my slides, I swear. Certification days, which I know folks like Daniel and others have benefited from. I believe they are still taking signups for the webinars going on now through the end of the month. I don't know where those webinars are in real time in terms of if they're in tracks or anything, but we've provided the links that you can go check out. Also, they've extended some of the voucher certifications to the end of the year. I don't know if that's because maybe some went unredeemed, but again, certification days is a great program that in the end gets you 50% off your certification fee. So it's, it's free money to potentially go pass an exam and invest in that certification, getting you that next level up position or something bigger and better, or whatever. So definitely go check those out. Pearl says in the chat she's looking for a CPQ study buddy. So if anybody wants to jump in, and I know CPQ continues to just grow and grow and grow in demand. So if anybody else is working on CPQ, go ahead and jump in the chat there. And the trailhead quests, this, I didn't dive too deep into this, but I saw this posted a couple of days ago. If you complete one of the 4 developer or Einstein Analytics supersets, which I don't quite know what a superset is compared to maybe the super badges or whatever, you could potentially win a free Salesforce certification voucher. So again, links are right there if that's something that you want to check out. Free certs are free certs. All right. Now's the time when I get to shut up and bring in the stars of the show. And then everybody on mute applauds, and I don't blame you. Let's go ahead and first welcome Luke Rastetter from OwnBackup, who, like I said, OwnBackup sponsored us a couple of years ago about the export functions. And now more than ever with business continuity plans, getting a lot of dust blown off of them due to COVID, OwnBackup is definitely a key player in the Salesforce ecosystem that can benefit pretty much every customer out there. So Luke, 7 steps to recovering lost data using Salesforce Weekly Export. I'm going to hand it over to you and your team, sir.
All right, Dale, thank you so much. As you can see with this picture, I am now repping my quarantine hair. Went with the buzz look rather than the long hair. And I don't know if I'm going to grow it back. I kind of like it. My wife likes it, so I think I'm pretty happy with it. But it's very nice to meet everybody virtually here, and hope you guys are all well and safe. So now I'm going to share my screen just to make sure everybody can see it. Can everybody see it okay?
Looks good.
Yep.
Awesome, cool. So a couple of things. First, we do have OwnBackup. We do have a webinar, or actually an event, a virtual event on Wednesday. We have some Nobel Prize laureates, and we have Parker Harris, and we are going to have some thought leaders from the health and life sciences industry, as well as I don't know if you guys are the fans of The Office. We're going to have David Wallace, that actor. He's actually a finance person in real life. He's going to be speaking, and so it's going to be a 24-hour event. And I do have a couple members of my team who are going to be with me on this. And Hudson can drop the link of our event in the chat if you are interested. So I am Luke. I am an account executive at OwnBackup. I spent some time at Salesforce for a couple of years and went to a review site called G2 Crowd for a couple of years after that. And now I'm back in the OwnBackup in the Salesforce ecosystem. And I am accompanied by Leanne Robinson, who's also an account executive, and Hudson Phillips. So we brought our A team to this event. So thanks everybody for having us. And so for the next 30 minutes or so, we really wanted to talk about the 7 steps to recovering lost data using the Salesforce Weekly Export. And if you aren't familiar with the Weekly Export, that's okay. We'll talk a little bit about it, but also what you can do to recover any lost data. So I guess, why are we talking about lost data using the export? What we found at Dreamforce in 2019 was that data loss can happen almost to anybody. And we did a survey of Salesforce customers, and we found that almost 1/3 of survey respondents reported the data loss or corruption in Salesforce. And if you would want to raise your hand or say yes, that you've experienced data loss or corruption in Salesforce at your company or previous company, feel free to raise your hand, as we do like to know that it is real. And what we found is, almost half of our respondents who experienced the data loss said the incident was actually caused by human error. So that could just be fat fingering data. And this can really occur in organizations of all sizes. It doesn't have to be SMB. It could be mid-market, GB, enterprise, everybody. And we also found that integration errors cause 8% of data loss and corruption. So it can happen when companies enrich their Salesforce platform by integrating internal systems or applications and 7% is, through migration, moving, large volumes of data or transitioning from classic to lightning. There's definitely some risk of incorrect data overwriting. And lastly, 7% of bad code, working on applications and workflows or updates, can cause some data loss or corruption here. And so we've identified 7 steps. And throughout this presentation, we're going to go pretty high level. We don't want to go too much into the weeds, but we do have an entire ebook about this. And Hudson, will drop it in the chat, and it's blog.ownbackup.com/resources. And you'll be able to find the entire ebook that we did, highlighting everything more in depth of what we're going to talk today, if you really want to dig into the weeds here. And if if you're not familiar with the weekly export, it's a free export of all your Salesforce data that can only be done once a week. And then traditionally, you're going to download all of that data to a CSV file, usually to your desktop computer. We hope you never have to do this, but if you do, we hope you find this information valuable. So what's the first step here? The first step is we want to size the damage of the loss. And so how do you size the damage of a data loss? The most important thing that we tell everybody is you have to understand your schema. If accounts gets deleted, you need to know your schema to understand what else could be affected by this cascading delete. So if you delete an account, you need to remember that everything that's associated with that you'll lose. So that could be your related children and grandchildren of all of the the schema. And there are a variety of tools available. One is publicly available. It's free. It's called Salesforce Workbench, and that's would be a great starting point. The next step is isolating the missing data. I always like to use an analogy of it's kind of like you're standing in a jam-packed, crowded auditorium, and you're trying to figure out who's not there. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but what we need to do in this step is that you need to have, if you have 2 sets of data, you can start to run comparisons. What existed before that does not exist now, and those are going to be your deleted records. So we want to open up that before weekly export file for accounts and compare it with the latest copy and find out what accounts are missing. And then you need to extract the relevant tables from each data set, open the 2 files in Excel, and then you need to sort, they're usually through like a VLOOKUP of some sort, compare and identify the missing parent data, and find related records in readiness to create a restore file for each object. So we all love Salesforce. Salesforce is a complex system, and it's hard to know in advance what to back up. So we recommend that it's best practice to back up everything. And it's also important to remember that the weekly export, it's not going to contain or include your metadata. The third thing we need to do is creating your restore files. And this is, you're going to create your restore files for each object containing the missing records of that object. So what do we need to do here? So as you identify the missing children, you need to add these records to a future restore file, one for each type of object. Again, knowing your schema is going to be key to this process. Ensuring that you catch all the relevant object records that you've been removed via the original cascading delete. So at the end of step 3, you'll have anywhere from 10 to 15 CSV files, and some even more for some complex environments, and then one for each object that needs to be reinserted. Remapping all of those objects can be a real challenge. We've heard that it is a nightmare. But what we do in step 4 is really going to save you some time. And step 4 is going to be creating custom external ID fields and then preparing for the Salesforce restore. You know, with our name OwnBackup, we are more than just backup. We actually do the restore for you. But if you're using the weekly export, it's completely fine. Remember, you know, every single time that you insert a brand new Salesforce record, a new unique ID will be generated. So this is how we solve the issue of restoring data and reconnecting relationships based on those original Salesforce IDs. In step 4, we create a new, you know, custom unique field in Salesforce on those tables called old account ID. And then from there, under build, you select customize, expand the account object and click fields, select a new button and create a custom field. We're going to specify text as the field type, and you're going to click next. Enter old account ID as the field label, enter 18 for length, check unique. So there's a lot of steps here that you need to do to create that external field. And again, remember that the really in-depth ebook that we created will go in depth of exactly how you would want to do this. And then and then step 5, I'm actually going to hand it off to Leanne, who I introduced at the top of the webinar, and she is going to take it from here.
Yeah, before I move on with the ever so thrilling step 5, which includes data loader, I just wanted to check in and make sure we're tracking okay. Is everyone kind of familiar with the weekly export? I don't want anyone suffering in silence here. Is everything kind of Luke just went over making sense? Your thumbs up. I have no idea what you're talking about. You're crazy people. No. Okay. Well, my name is Leanne Robinson. I've been with OwnBackup for about a year now, and I previously was with Salesforce Maps or Map Anything, if anyone used to or currently uses Salesforce Maps. So now we are ready to start preparing the deleted record files. The first thing we need to do is some more prep work before you can import your CSVs back into Salesforce. So you're going to need to edit these restore files and use the new external ID as a column heading. So you have to go into each one of these CSVs and replace the column heading which is what is provided right there. Again, all in the ebook if you should ever need to use it. We hope not. Then you're going to have to rinse and repeat and do that for every single CSV that you need to prepare to restore. Look, you can, next slide, please. So the next thing that we need to do is make sure that it all goes back to your schema. Always goes back to your schema. You have to know exactly which relationships are where in order to correctly restore them, because the order is really important. So for this example, sorry, Luke, next slide. I need to be like, whoosh. So you have to be really careful when you're restoring files because of these relationships. So you always want to start with your account, knowing that that's probably the parent object, and then go down through your different child objects. Usually when you start with accounts, that's an insert functionality, and it's pretty straightforward. It should auto map in that way. But then for children, you're going to use the upsert functionality, which should maintain the relationships to the parent object. So we can take a closer look on the next slide. Cool. All right, guys, I know these are really old screenshots of data loader. They might look ancient to some of you who have been using Salesforce for a very long time. Like I said, you might want to start off with accounts. You want to start off with the parent objects, use the insert option, and begin uploading your choose the CSV file with the accounts, and then begin that process. I think there's another data loader. Yeah, old school. Let's see. Yep, okay. So now you want to be able to use the existing map if you performed the object before, and create a new map if you don't have one already existing. Make sure that the custom field with the old account ID, like we talked about earlier, is available, and you can see it here for reference. And then you would want to go ahead and follow this process and save the mapping for future use. And continue on to restoring child objects, which would be the upsert functionality. Like I said, I have the thrilling portion of this of this presentation, which is data loader. And that's exactly what it takes to restore files. So, all right, yep. A few more things that you guys might want to consider. We've kind of only been talking about parent-child relationships, but of course there are a lot of other more complicated relationships in Salesforce that could exist, like records that are associated with multiple parents, the intra-object relationships. Attachments can be super tricky to restore because you need to know the file path, and there's a little bit more scrubbing that you need to do there, like changing the file name. They're going to create in Salesforce the parent ID, the unique ID to be able to link it to, and the body of which the file path that you have to go back to. The intra-object relationships are kind of similar to parent accounts, where you're going to need to run multiple updates for the same object. So again, all of this goes back to understanding your schema. I'm not sure if any of you have, started a new job or maybe inherited a really old Salesforce org where there are some legacy relationships that seriously just don't make sense. So I would just be extra careful of those and aware of those if you ever do need to restore data. So all this to say, which is why OwnBackup is, here today. There are easier options available. We would like to consider OwnBackup one of them, so you wouldn't have to do all of this because it is quite the manual effort. We have a funny story to share. It's not really funny, it kind of stinks for Multnomah County, but they actually tried to restore using the weekly export. They had tried to archive some data for a business requirement, and then as it turns out, the business came back to the Salesforce team and said, wait, we need that data back. And they actually didn't have it backed up in the weekly export the way that they thought. They tried to restore from it using some of the steps that we just went over today. They ended up finding OwnBackup by using our ebook that we've dropped that link to. And just using that ebook and some of these steps that we've just been over, it took them over 80 hours across 5 weeks to restore any of that lost data, which ultimately led them into becoming an OwnBackup customer and looking at some of the other vendors in the backup and restore world for Salesforce. I thought this slide would be important to go over today because if you're not familiar with OwnBackup, or maybe you weren't quite familiar that Salesforce doesn't back up your data and it is your responsibility, I think it's important to kind of go over that. So I was honestly completely shocked for how long I had been in the Salesforce ecosystem that Salesforce does not back up your customer data. They, in fact, say it's the customer's responsibility to back it up, or ultimately it's Salesforce's responsibility to provide the uptime and availability of your data. So I honestly thought, hey, I'm an admin, sales rep comes into my office, they say 20 of their opportunities are gone, who knows what happened, maybe they shouldn't have had that permission, maybe, somebody did something. They're not in the recycle bin. I can call Salesforce and say, hey, get me that data back, right? Or what's the process to do that? When in fact, that's not really how that works at all. And it's up to you as the customer to retrieve that data. And that responsibility is something that OwnBackup would want to take on with you and give you the full confidence that we would be able to help you restore in that scenario. Because as we kind of just discussed, the hardest part sometimes is just understanding your schema, understanding how much data was lost, and then understanding the relationships that it takes to make sure that you're not missing the entire domino effect of corruption or data loss. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. Was anyone kind of familiar that Salesforce didn't back up their data, or is there anyone had any kind of data loss where they've had to use the weekly export or something similar? Oh, Melissa wrote, I didn't realize it was good to update it with the Salesforce releases, but it makes sense.
So yeah, there was a kind of a side question going on there about old data loader versus new data loader. And one of the things that, I guess this would also be a question of what's in OwnBackup's product suite, but with the Apex data loader, the desktop application, it is specific to the API version that you downloaded it in, which then means, like, when you translate that back, because a lot of people don't realize this, with every Salesforce release, there's a new batch of objects. There's a new batch of fields. There's new stuff that comes with every API version, and your version of Apex Data Loader that you may have saved on your desktop doesn't know about those. So that's why it's good to always install the latest version so that it's so that you can get literally all of your data, not just all of the data that would have existed at whatever point in time. So then my question to OwnBackup is, how do you have best practices? Do you have any products, or do you have anything that allows users to be at current API version because of those constant enhancements from release to release?
That's a great point. And I actually want to bring up, one of my customers told me the other day, they use OwnBackup just to keep updated with the releases in Salesforce. So what OwnBackup does is we automatically take a daily backup of your data and your metadata. And we also give you tools to monitor any changes that are made to that data and get a notification on it. So I have a customer that uses OwnBackup for other things, but one of them is just to get notified when the releases happen. So instead of scrolling through all the release notes of things that change, they just get a notification to see what has been added. So using OwnBackup, you're not going to use Data Loader. That's part of our tool, right? We're going to be able to restore and reassociate objects automatically for you. We're going to give you a preview before you do any of that, because you don't want to go live back into production in any way. But you wouldn't be using Data Loader at all using OwnBackup.
So what you're saying is it prevents the hold my beer admins.
Yeah. Melissa, thanks for being here. Yeah. And we just have this question slide up here as well with our email addresses. I love to chat. So if you have any questions, or want to learn more about OwnBackup, feel free to just send us an email or thoughts, or just be like, I had no idea Salesforce didn't do this for us, because I didn't know either. So also, you know what? We didn't drop our AirPod link in. Yeah.
I just reposted it.
Thank you.
Cool.
Make sure you guys use this link to go register for AirPods. We hopefully, if everyone registers today, we would like to choose a winner by the end of today and post that. So AirPods for everyone working from home with noisy dogs and children and parents who want to say hello.
Co-workers.
Yeah, coworkers.
Yeah.
There's not a water cooler talk in my house, so.
Yeah, Daniel, that's great about that's the first thing you did about the backup. How did you discover that? Like, what was the conversation like?
I just was actually, this might have been a good throwback to the MVP office hours, but that was one of the first things that came up when they said, if you're a new admin starting over, there's your checklist, da, 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 da. And that was one of the things that came up, and I go in and look at it real quick. It's like, well, I'm the 11th guy with my hands on this org, and nobody's ever thought to do this. So it seems pretty, step one type thing to do. So it's there now.
Good.
I think it's hard for especially existing orgs, and when you're coming in as a consultant that you don't have any real ties to know how did that org grow up, what was its life, what was anything before you got to it. There's a lot of overlooked things like data health, object health, any of that a lot of the times you don't even have time to address. So props to you, Daniel, for even just having that front of mind to go look at that.
Right. Instead of doing the thing I was contracted for, kind of look at all the things wrong with this org, and I just kind of took a step back and said, well, first of all, and then started there. So
any other questions for the OwnBackup crew?
Not a question, but I'll speak up real quick. I am now working with Waddell and Reed in Kansas City. So as Dale knows, I live in Manhattan, so I'm a couple hours away. So it's been great to work at home the past several months. They have just adopted Salesforce for a database for all of their advisors and home office people to be able to get to all of their data in one place. They have data in at least 4 or 5 other places that they're pulling all into Salesforce. So that's the main reason that they have it. It's not being used for CRM or recruiting or any type of sales or anything like right now. I think eventually we'll get there. But I came on in time to implement it, and I'm kind of the lead admin. And one of the things that was asked of me during my interviews was about backup tools, and I immediately said OwnBackup. And about 6 months later, we actually implemented OwnBackup. So very exciting. And so far, it's been really interesting. We actually have been using it for a couple months now, and we have our testers. We've been a little bit low on the tester area. We haven't had many people, and it's interesting. Everything they do is different, totally different than how I've seen Salesforce used everywhere else. But anyway, we actually have testers going in now to verify that OwnBackup does everything that we need it to do, which of course we already know it does. But it's been great. Just a plug for OwnBackup. We've really liked it.
Awesome.
Melissa?
Thanks,
Yeah.
Melissa.
Welcome.
That's awesome.
Thanks, Melissa. I think one last thing I'd love to put in there. I think, right now, as we're talking about data recovery, I know Salesforce offers a one-time data recovery service, but they're actually retiring that service on July 31st of this year. So I'll send a link and put it in the chat, just kind of speaking to that. But I just wanted to make sure that you all were aware of this. It's the one-time data recovery that they offer. It's like you pay a fee, and they kind of they're able to recover most of it in this instance. But I just wanted to make you all aware that they're going to retire that on the 31st.
That's a really good call out. Thank you, Hudson. I hadn't even thought of that.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you again. We love having you. Like I said, you're repeat sponsors. We love having you back because this is core content. We were talking offline before the meeting started for the whole group that I love leading our group because we're not just admins, we're developers. We touch every space, and it's sponsors products like OwnBackup that actually get our collaborative conversations going, because admins are going to think about it in one way, developers are going to think about it in another, and the walls break down between the two skill sets. This is core foundational stuff right here to help sustain healthy orgs for your entire company. So we appreciate you giving us your time and energy. So thank you.
Always. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Sign up for AirPods.
Yep, sign up for AirPods. And Hudson put that link in there about the data recovery services retirement. So thank you, sir. All right, David from DEG,
yes, sir.
You're ready to pick up the ball from here?
I am ready.
Customer 360.
Yes. Can you see PowerPoint?
We can. Love
Sweet.
that background.
Our marketing team does wonders. Oh, I don't do that. Okay. All right. So quick introduction to myself, or of myself, I should say, and DEG. So DEG is a local Kansas City area consulting company with national and international clients. We are now owned by a multinational company called Isobar, which rolls up to Dentsu, which is a really large Japanese company, but we're still locally operated with our kind of founders here in Kansas City. We are a platinum partner of Salesforce and work within all of the different clouds across the whole Salesforce ecosystem. Myself, I'm a strategist and a consultant within our core practice. So anything that encompasses Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Community Cloud, and then a lot of the cross-cloud components of it. So Customer 360 Data Manager is what I'll be specifically talking about here today. We were very fortunate with our partnership with Salesforce and just kind of the people we knew there. We got involved with the Customer 360 Data Manager product early on, really kind of looking back almost a year ago, working with the product team as they were preparing to launch it. Got an opportunity to be trained up and get some preview on it, provide some feedback to the Salesforce product team, and became part of their pioneer community. So still engaged to this day on the latest, greatest within the platform, and giving tidbits and feedback onto the training materials and different ways that they're going to market with it. So it's been a great partnership and just kind of great ability to see more of what it is. And fortunately, I got to give you guys a presentation of what we know and what we've seen of it here today. So what we'll be going over, or what I plan to go over here in our session, is really what is Customer 360, and specifically what is Customer 360 Data Manager. Why is it that this has become a platform or a specific tool that Salesforce is looking to launch? You know, what's the market driving factors and reasons for it, as well as common use cases for it. And then we'll go into a little bit of technical information, and I will jump into my demo org in order to show you guys some more information of it. All right, so I'm going to do something real quick here on Zoom that might end my sharing, so I might have to reshare, but I clicked something on accident. I want to see if I can bring up questions. So I cannot. So are you guys able to still see my screen, Dale?
Yes. Yep.
Perfect. And then please interrupt, please ask questions. I can't see the chat while I'm in this presentation mode. So Dale, if you don't mind just kind of interrupting me if something comes up in chat that's worth talking through.
Yeah.
Looks like we've got a decent amount of time, so definitely want to go through that.
I can do that.
Awesome. So what is Customer 360? So those of you who attended or saw everything that came out of Salesforce's Dreamforce last year, Customer 360 was everywhere. And as Salesforce does within their branding, they've kind of made it a little bit complicated on what the different products are, what the Customer 360 platform is, what the different products are. So from a lot of the latest and greatest in branding, Salesforce has rebranded as the Customer 360 platform, which is different than the product tools of Customer 360 Data Manager and Customer 360 Audiences. So the way I tried to equate what the products themselves are is to think through how Salesforce over the last number of years has branded Einstein. So we all know, especially us in the Salesforce ecosystem, that Einstein is really anything AI driven. And when you look at Service Cloud and look at Einstein bots, that's a very different set of technology than the recommendation engine in Marketing Cloud for smart email sends and when to trigger an email to a customer. So those are completely different technology backends. They're very different use cases that they're satisfying, but they're all branded by Salesforce as Einstein. So when I think about Customer 360, realize there's at least 2 products now that have been announced under the Customer 360 product standpoint. They are different products with work together, but really are intended to do a couple different things, but they're all being branded as Customer 360. And then with the Customer 360 platform, it's currently causing some confusion with kind of the marketplace and our clients. So specifically Customer 360 Data Manager that we'll be focusing in here today. This was the product that was announced back in Dreamforce 2018. And they used Crocs as their kind of first go-to market client. And that was a lot of the screenshots and different capabilities that were demoed were along with Crocs. It went GA at Dreamforce this past year in 2019. The product itself is being offered at no cost to customers who have multiple enterprise or above CRM instances or enterprise CRM and Commerce Cloud. Now, this is not the only way that you can get access to Customer 360. There is an exemption process that you can go through in order to get access to the product that has to make a case for why you think it would be useful for your specific business context, and goes to the product group to identify, and really they want to make sure that you will be successful with the product given the nuances and potential limitations in the current GA release, but you can go through an exemption process. We have taken clients through that exemption process and gained approval when they only had Marketing Cloud, but it was a use case that would be very applicable for what the client was trying to do. And what does it do? So what Customer 360 Data Manager does is it creates a unified data model of your customer information to be used as a point of reference across your connected systems. So what's important here is when Customer 360 Data Manager builds that single profile, it's doing deduplication, it's identifying all the different records coming in from all the different source systems, but it's building a skinny data model, or what they're calling their cloud data model, that doesn't store all of the information about your customers, but it stores enough information to have those identifiers and be able to identify duplicates of information across the systems, and then really builds the bridge between your multiple systems. So if you're in Service Cloud and I want to see all the orders from a customer from Commerce Cloud, it's not going to Customer 360 Data Manager to pull the orders, but it's going to Customer 360 Data Manager to say, here's the person that I've identified from Customer 360 Data Manager's deduplication rules that's published back to Service Cloud. Here's the person I've identified, give me all of their orders. And it's going to do a real-time call out to Commerce Cloud, say, give me all the orders for this person, not for this record, but this person that could span amongst multiple records, and return it to Service Cloud. So it's a point of reference that allows you to start to unlock your customer data in ways that you were not able to do previously. So Customer 360 Audiences. So this is the other major product that was initially announced at Connections 2019. And this is intended to be the CDP solution that Salesforce is launching. So really marketing focused. And it's currently in a beta release, and it's going GA later on this calendar year. So I'll pause there. That's a lot of information just on what is Customer 360 as well as Data Manager. Any questions, Dale?
None in the chat. Anybody haven't? Oh, do we have a hand raised? Thought I saw one.
All right. I'll
Yep.
keep going. All right, so I'm going to rapid fire through a few slides here as we continue through. And this is really kind of the business context of why is it that Salesforce has invested in this product, especially a product that they're offering at no cost to their customers. So what we've kind of seen within customer interaction over the last few years is customers are expecting a lot more of brands. They're a lot more likely to try different brands and different products. They're not being as brand sticky as they once were. And they have a lot of expectations of brands moving forward, as well as when someone does something well, they expect everyone else to be doing that well also. And if they're not, they're willing to change. Customer behavior is also changing dramatically over the last few years with mobile devices and advances in technology, and with 5G, really just around the corner, so, somewhat here now. Expecting things to continue to change dramatically and quickly, where customers are expecting brands to know more and more about them in every single interaction, no matter what they're doing. And when we look at how customers go along that journey in order to really become that first purchaser of a product, as well as become a retained customer and repurchase, it's a long journey that meanders across a lot of different phases. So from just first finding out about a product, being interested in that product, engaging with that brand to understand, do research, potentially have some push marketing to convince them to do something related to it. Finally, purchasing that product, going through the fulfillment of that product to actually track a shipment or get that product itself, or if you have an issue, return that product and get a replacement for it. And then finally, that retention of continuing to stay up to date with that customer and that repurchase that will occur. It's a meandering path. It can take a long time. And from a technology standpoint, it crosses a lot of different capabilities and components. So starting with Marketing Cloud, potentially to make that customer aware and interested in that product or that brand, to Commerce Cloud for actually making that purchase, to Service Cloud to get additional information or help with that product, make a return that will then span between Service Cloud and Commerce Cloud. And then there's a lot of different external Salesforce systems through OMS, through ERP, through shipping solutions, through all these different things that really build barriers for brands to be able to build that connection that customers are looking for today. And when the brands do it well, they're brands that we just know that are incredibly sticky, that people love. And you don't think about all the technology that goes into it and how things have to happen in order for it to work. You just think about the Starbucks app that tells you exactly where you are, what your product was that you last ordered, and where you can quickly get that coffee. Or Marriott Bonvoy's app, where it's going to give you the ability to make requests directly from the app, check in remotely when you land in the next city that you're going to, before we, when we could actually have all traveled prior to what's going on today. But it's seamless, and that's what causes us to like those brands. So getting there is kind of an uphill battle today because of all of the legacy technologies that exist, the silos of data, the multiple systems, and it's not an easy path. And there's a lot of ways, at least traditionally, with kind of some data mastering technologies that have been expensive and very hard to navigate because of all these historical issues. So again, when a customer is going through their journey of contacting a customer service agent, of trying to navigate what they need to get done, again, it's incredibly complicated from the company's standpoint with all the different technologies. So what does this really look like? And where does Customer 360 Data Manager come in to help solve this? So to do that, we like to talk about Rachel and her information. So Rachel ends up being known by a brand in multiple different systems, by multiple different identifiers, and in multiple different ways. Specifically, there's a lot of ways that Rachel doesn't make it easy on brands to understand who she is, because when you're looking at her from a marketing standpoint, you may only have her email. When you're looking at it from a social standpoint, you only have her social handle. When you're looking at it from a commerce standpoint, Salesforce and other studies have found that up to 80% of customers will check out as a guest, even if they're a registered customer. So you don't even have that unique identifier that they've signed up to identify themselves as. And it leads to a lot of data in different systems that makes you as a brand or as a company really hard to identify who is Rachel, who is the person across all of these different identifiers. But for the companies that can do it, and using technologies like Customer 360 Data Manager, it really helps you unlock the full picture of Rachel. So you're no longer looking at Rachel as an identifier or as the specific information you have in only one system, but you're able to see the full picture of who Rachel is, what her interests are that she's identified through a marketing or a service standpoint, what her order frequency has been, what types of things she has ordered in the past, what products she's interested in, how valuable of a customer she is based upon the revenue, and then what potential issues has she had, how does she interact with the brand, what type of support things has she needed to have in the past. And really, at the end of the day, using all these different technologies, because it's not just Customer 360 Data Manager, it allows you to unlock all these different potentials on how you treat Rachel as a person and not just as a data point within your system. So a lot of slides so far, looking at time real quick, kind of using this slide here to show that there are a lot of different ways that we identify. So take an example of Rachel, how we are able to identify her and bring all the information together. And as you can see, the Customer 360 Data Manager is just one component of the whole solution that you need to look at if you're trying to build that single view of a customer. It adds a lot of capabilities and adds a lot of additional data and enhances, but you need things like the Marketing Cloud connector between between Marketing Cloud and Commerce Cloud. The Commerce Cloud connector between Service Cloud and Commerce Cloud. There's ways to do it externally with MuleSoft and other data points using Einstein Analytics and even Tableau to pull in more information. So it all has to play as a very large ecosystem to come together, but Customer 360 Data Manager is kind of that newest, latest, and greatest tool that allows you to start to consolidate and see people as, or see a customer as a person and not as a data point, and then start to leverage all the other technologies to string that picture together or make it more actionable. So there was a question that popped up here. So can we call it a customer defragmentation tool? So I guess, you know, obviously when we start talking about the terminology, there's a lot of things that are assumed or thought about within the different ways of thinking about it. So a lot of ways that I kind of think about it is it's kind of an MDM light, so master data management system light, because you're not going to keep all of the information of your customer in this tool, but you're going to be able to identify who they are using the deduplication engine that's actually been seen to solve a lot of problems where that MDM hasn't been able to solve before, and then be able to string together all of the different systems. So defragmentation is definitely a term you could use. I like to talk about like an orchestration layer. So it's able to identify, you know, here is the person that's being requested, and based upon what's being requested from that source system, it's able to identify what is the other system that has that information, so it can then pull back that right information and provide it in real time to whoever it is that's trying to make that call. All right, so what are some common use cases for Customer 360 Data Manager, at least as we've seen, as we've been starting to talk with our clients and working with Salesforce as they're launching it out into production and into their clients' hands as well. So first of all, it's, you know, as I said, creating that common customer profile. So as I also alluded to, you know, we've worked with clients who have MDM systems who still have the challenge of not being able to identify the person across all of the different data sources. So data matching is not always something that's standard in MDMs, and there's times when that has failed in MDMs. If we look back at the slide with Rachel and how she identifies herself, a lot of times they can't distinguish Rachel versus Rach. They can't distinguish a international phone number that has a 0 on the end of it compared to one that just starts with the 44. There's a lot of kind of historical ways that MDMs haven't been able to make that identification, that using a Customer 360 Data Manager in conjunction with an MDM even can help solve for some of those. And what we end up doing, or what we see through the Data Manager, is the assignment of what's called the Global Party ID. So the Global Party ID becomes that identifier of the person and publishes it back to all the other systems that interact with Customer 360 Data Manager in order to start to build that picture. So what can you do with that once you have that Global Party ID and that common profile? So again, you now have that reference point to any other system. So you can use that in order to surface back all of the orders that a customer has placed, both authenticated and unauthenticated, or across other ways that they might have been identified in a real-time fashion, so you can start to build that full picture. For if you have multiple CRM systems, maybe you're a financial institution and you have your banking division that does personal loans and personal banking on one system, and then you have your asset management on a different instance of Salesforce. If you have a customer who maybe has recently closed their account in their personal banking, you can now see that information in a different Salesforce org through Data Manager. Or if you have a customer who's had an issue with their personal banking and now they're coming to their commercial loan group and it's a different Salesforce system, you can start to see that full picture of the customer through the identification in Data Manager. The other big use case is data stewardship tools, which is one thing that we'll look at when we jump in the tool. But it allows you to start to track your data of your customers across different systems, helps provide compliance with GDPR and CCPA, through different tools that it has. And if a customer comes and says, you know, I want you to remove me from your system, it's a way to at least track today where that customer is currently in all of your different systems that are plugged into Data Manager, so you can more easily go in and do that cleanup. Hopefully in a future release, there will be some more automated processes within the platform to do that. So one of the use cases that we created specifically at DEG, partnering with Salesforce based upon some feedback that they had, was the ability to leverage or surface up marketing details about a customer into Service Cloud. So historically, what journeys, how a customer's interacted from a Marketing Cloud standpoint, and again, just what journeys is a customer enrolled in, has not been easily accessible or visible outside of Marketing Cloud, sometimes not even within Marketing Cloud. And once you look at the fact that a customer can have multiple email addresses in Marketing Cloud, there really was no way to say, looking at just myself, David Adler in Salesforce, here is all of the different emails that I might be using, because I'll use my DG digital email for one instance, I'll use my personal email for another instance, and I'll use my spam email for a third instance. So I could be known 3 times in any given marketing system. And there was no way when I'm calling in and identifying myself as dadler@degdigital.com that I'm also adler.david@gmail.com, and here's all the other information about me. So not only just being able to pull back information from Marketing Cloud on a real time, but also to be able to show that full picture of the customer is ways that we're able to kind of leverage the data from Marketing Cloud into Service. Another use case that's been kind of a eye-opening for clients when they're looking at their data is who are their top purchasers. So again, knowing that 80% of customers are checking out as guests today, when you look at who are the people who are purchasing the most, you're being provided a skewed view of it. And it's something that clients don't even realize is happening. They think that they know who their top purchases are because of course they do. They've got the information, they're checking out online, they have it in their data warehouse. It's an easy thing for them to know. But when you start to pull that information into Data Manager and feed it back through, so using Einstein Analytics in this example, you can actually see and show customers that the way they've been looking at their data is wrong because they're not seeing the full picture. So as we continue to kind of look through how this manifests itself, and also looking at not just Customer 360 Data Manager, but all the other tools that Salesforce has to start to string together that full picture of the customer using Einstein Analytics, using the Commerce Cloud connector within Service Cloud, you can start to see the power of what you can start to surface to agents within Service Cloud of all the information of the customer. So on the left panel here, you see that Customer 360 profile, where you're able to now see the information about the customer that's being pushed back from Customer 360 Data Manager. You're able to see what's potentially in their cart today by using API calls back into Commerce Cloud. And again, leveraging the global party ID to now see what that person has potentially across multiple shopping carts. And then back in from Einstein Analytics, you're able to see information about them, about their overall spend and their history of spend and information. Again, using multiple components that Salesforce offers beyond just Data Manager, but leveraging that global party ID to really unlock the data. All right, so before I get into some of the technical kind of underlining database structure, I'm going to pause again and see if there's any other questions coming up.
There aren't any questions in the chat, but as I'm hearing this, I can't help but think how perfect of a marriage this meeting has been today of what you're talking about from the in the moment 360 view versus OwnBackup and you know, helping back up, helping restore, all the things in the periphery. So that's just where my head is. I'm kind of fascinated by all those.
Let's say, Dale, I was going to just put you on the spot. You're a smart guy too. So if you've got any
Giving
insights,
yourself a little pat on the back there.
I'm just fascinated by it. I'm the guy that loves to rip the cover off the clock and see how the gears move. So
All right,
seeing
well,
you come together is one of those big experiments there.
let's rip that cover off. So I've got two different diagrams here. One's the GA diagram. So this is what went live back at Dreamforce. And the other one is kind of the future, some near term, some not so near term, because as we know, COVID slowed down everything everywhere. And so some of the capabilities that we were expecting to be live by early part of this calendar year or by now have definitely been pushed to later this year or next. So at GA, the two primary applications that are supported and really the use case that's being driven forward is a Service and Commerce Cloud direct connection into Customer 360 Data Manager. Again, there's ways to circumvent that. There's ways to pull in Marketing Cloud data as we've worked with our clients as well to do so. But the official on the book paper GA supported primary use cases are between Commerce Cloud and Service Cloud. So the way that the application works is there's a lot of underlying databases and capabilities, as you can see, that can also extract from external data sources as well. So when you plug your systems into Data Manager, I was just reading the comment here. So as you start plugging your systems into Data Manager, what you see on the underside is the data federation services. So that is where your information will initially be consumed. So you're going to have your feed that you're going to trigger today, a manual feed recommend daily between Commerce Cloud and the Data Federation service, as well as Service Cloud and the Data Federation services. That will then eventually get to your batch data files, but then external data systems as well. And that probably actually points to Data Federation services as well, is where everything kind of comes in as your staging table. From there, that information gets published up to your global profile hub, which becomes your underlying database for Customer 360 Data Manager. And that's where you go through your deduplication process, and all of your additional tools that Customer 360 Data Manager provides goes off of the information that's published into the global profile hub. The Salesforce information model, I think they renamed it now to the cloud information model, is that skinny data model that I referred to earlier. That is where you have just your basic components of first name, last name, email address, phone number, physical address, date of birth, and a few other identifiers that they've added in, or metadata components that they've added in. That becomes the component, the source of truth of your customers within Data Manager. And then again, everything else comes as a point of reference by pulling the information back from the other systems. So when Service Cloud requests a call from Commerce Cloud, it's going through that data federation layer to send that identifier, and it's going up into Commerce Cloud in order to pull back that information. Also, as I alluded to earlier, but didn't mention here, the customer resolution engine is that point that everything sits on top of. So you'll run through your customer resolution engine before you load it into the global profile hub, and that's where it's going through identifying your rules that you've set up and creating that global party ID. So as we look to the future, so Marketing Cloud is the next major component that they're looking to turn on, as well as MuleSoft to drive any external data sources. The really exciting thing for me is when they launched their Salesforce messaging bus. So today, there's not a capability for me to say, okay, within Service Cloud, if a customer logs into their Commerce Cloud profile and they update their name from Rachel to Rach, I want to have that update as my name of my customer in Service Cloud. That's not a capability. There's no kind of event-based messaging that goes across the different systems. But the Salesforce messaging bus in a future release is what's going to build that and allow me to subscribe to it and then say, do I want to subscribe to name changes, phone number, address updates? How do I want to treat that information, and gives me that capability to do so. So that I think that messaging bus is going to be a pretty impactful and powerful tool when that comes. All right, so who wants to actually see the application? Dale, I'm going to assume you raised your hand at least.
Yes, sir.
All right, so here, okay, so what I have here is my instance of Customer 360 Data Manager. So when I log in, it gives me, obviously a quick home page to do a lot of information. I guess a quick kind of, again, under the covers information about it. It is built on Core, so it's built on Salesforce Core platform. So it is the usability, though it's kind of a different UI on top of it, is very common. And as you get into the more of the setup features, it looks a lot like Core. And then as it connects to the different source database systems, so today only Commerce Cloud does it connect this way, but it is going on a direct database connection. So you're not using APIs, you're not using OAuth authentication, because it's all within the Salesforce server side. They have done it so that it will connect at the database level, which also performance is enhanced, issue resolutions enhanced, security is enhanced, a lot of really great capabilities on how they're going about that, rather than going through the APIs like their other products tend to do for connecting different systems together. All right, so my data sources, so this is where I can add in my specific data sources, my global profile rules. This is where I'm going to set up my rules for how is it that I'm going to identify a person through all the different sources that come in. So as you can see, kind of the standard rules that we have set up is for first name, last name, email, where we're going to do a fuzzy match on first name. So that's where it's going to identify Rach versus Rachel. Exact match on last name and exact email address, or fuzzy first, exact last, exact phone number formatted as E163 phone number. So looking at the international codings of phone numbers as well. First, last, and address. So fuzzy first, exact last, and exact address, or a primary identifier. So these are the ways that we have set up in my demo instance on how we're going to consume information, and we're going to search to see if that person exists. Our data jobs is where we're tracking all of the jobs and the loads that we have done into the system itself. Our file staging, all of the information. So kind of back to that database picture that I showed before, here's where we're seeing that information in the system. So let's jump into our stewardship and see if I still have this in my, yes, I do, cool. So I'm going to search by email. So in our data stewardship, so this is really after everything's been consumed in. So I've consumed in my Service Cloud instance of information. I've consumed in Commerce Cloud of both order date table as well as customer table. So orders table in Commerce Cloud has those unique identifiers where if I'm checking out as a guest, I'm still providing my first name, last name, my address for billing purposes, my email address to receive confirmation. So you have all that information coming in on the order object within Commerce Cloud. So orders are coming over for that purpose, not for the order or order line item purpose, but just for that identifier purpose. So customers' orders, Service Cloud, person accounts have been identified, and then I did load in an external data source to kind of represent a data warehouse feed that potentially you're manually pushing in. So I'm going to search for a customer, and we're going to get their information back. So I'm going to searching by email. Today I can do email, phone number, or global party ID as my primary search capability. And we're going to start to see some information that we've captured on this person from various data sources. So if we click in, we're going to see here's that skinny data model or that cloud data model that's being produced. So this is really what we're tracking within Customer 360 Data Manager as being held here. Everything else is a reference point to the other systems. So we're able to come in, and so as a data steward, if I am contacted by this person and they say, I need to change my last name, I changed my last name, and especially if you're looking at, say, GDPR, and they're saying, I need to, I'm requesting you make this change and that it gets propagated to show compliance. Here is where I can say, as this customer master, I can change it. Maybe it was just misspelled. Maybe it's ES. And so that's why they're calling in. You can give a reason. So customer contacted to be updated. And as we all know, when we type when we're on screen shares, we never type as well as we normally do. And there it is, customer. So again, today, this now sits in Customer 360 Data Manager. We'll show how this can be surfaced into Service Cloud through the different components that we have, but it doesn't update those other systems. That's where that event bus, or the messaging bus that's coming in the future will be incredibly powerful in order to say when those updates occur, push that out to those other systems. In my change history, I can see the changes that occurred. So that change that I just made, we can identify that the name was updated, and I don't know why my clicking is not displaying it, but I can also undo my last change as well. So I can identify if that was a change that was made on mistake, that's something that can be undone. And then within our source data, so this is kind of as a technologist and database person, the thing that's really exciting for me is here's where we have now identified all of the different ways that we have identified this person in the past to build that Salesforce cloud model. So you can see that data stewardship was a way that we updated. So we updated the name and it created a record of the customer and all the information from what we just did. We see that there was a Service Cloud record. So here's our record ID of the person in Service Cloud. It came from our account object within Service Cloud. And here's the details that it captured and brought in from Service Cloud. Here's our customer record. So this was someone who was authenticated at some point in time within Commerce Cloud. So here's the information that came in from that specific record. And then here are all the orders that were placed. And again, it's not placed necessarily by our specific individual in Commerce Cloud. It could have been as an authenticated or unauthenticated user, but it was identified as being the same person through our matching rules. So by either first name, last name, email address, phone number, mailing address, and a combination thereof. So we see there's a lot of different email addresses that have actually shown up. So actually we see two primary email addresses that have shown up where they've placed an order, but we've been able to identify them as being the one person and assigned them our global party ID with that information. Any questions? Has this been valuable so far? Is this interesting?
It's very interesting just because no matter what the context is, data, this is what helps make data less junky, period.
Mm-hmm.
Brings it all together, gives it a common purpose. Absolutely.
Exactly. So I know there's a question. So use case to identify someone logging in as that customer, husband logging into a wife's Amazon account to buy something. So it's a very, very good example, and very, very good point. So it's not a way to necessarily identify, maybe if you're looking at it from a fraudulent perspective, but it does bring up a good example. So those of you who are more understanding or more marketing focused and within Marketing Cloud, the global party ID is not intended to be a subscriber ID in Marketing Cloud. And the reason for that is the global party ID of a person could change over time. So for the exact purpose as someone was pointing out, is that if someone's logged in as someone else within a system, but then identifies as a different physical address, that's going to build upon the information we have about a person, but might not always be 100% accurate for what that is. I like to use the example of my son. He's 5.5. So if I were to purchase, if he wanted to buy something on Amazon, it'd be being purchased by me. Maybe when he is, let's say, 15 years old, I'll give him a little bit more access, and he's got his allowance, and he'll say, "Hey, Dad, I've got your Amazon information. Can I buy this? And I'm going to pay you cash for it because I want him to learn lessons and not just have things given to him." So he'll purchase that, but that will kind of go across as potentially my information. But eventually he'll move out. I really, really hope so someday. Gets a job, moves out, has his own credit card, has his own information. And as he starts to kind of build his own profile, things will fracture and change within the system as they're interacting with those same brands over time. So it is really to consolidate down on those key identifiers, but it could change over time. He won't always be identified under that global party ID. He might be identified as me for a period of time, but eventually he'll get his own. All right, so we got a few minutes still here. So what I want to do is I want to jump over into Service Cloud and show you some information on how it gets represented back in Service Cloud. So here in Service Cloud, I'm logged in and we're looking at myself. So again, this panel here, though it's a Lightning component, so it's a standard Lightning component that comes with Customer 360 Data Manager. What's happening is this is actually pulling real time back from Data Manager to that skinny data model or the cloud data model to display the additional information we have about me from Customer 360 Data Manager. So we can see here, we've got my email address. You guys all got my phone number, so now you can call me even if you're looking apparently on this on Zoom or on YouTube later on. You've got my identifiers that are coming over. Normally, our global party ID, we wouldn't want to display this on agent screen layout, but for the purpose of seeing kind of the tracking of the data, we do want to show that here in our demo instance. We're now able to use some of the just standard reporting capabilities to identify that based upon our global party ID, there's actually 2 accounts that have been created, and there's 2 cases that have been created across those 2 accounts. Though when we look at this, we only see 1 case. So again, this is where we start to unlock some of the information of I, David Adler, call into a service center. I've identified myself as my DEG digital email address. We've created a case, but because we now have information from Customer 360, we can see that there's actually another account and 2 cases that have been created. So something else is going on that as an agent, we wouldn't have been aware of. Through our integration with Marketing Cloud, so this is where we're showing information through another Lightning Web component that we've created and using a cloud page in Marketing Cloud. We're able to surface back all of the email campaigns, and we can see by looking at the details that though I'm under 1 email address, I'm in a welcome journey. So that implies that I'm first identified for the first time as a person in buying from this brand. So they've enrolled me in a welcome journey under my Gmail account. But you can actually see that I've been a VIP under my other email account since last year. And I was recently put into a win-back campaign because I was having some type of issue. So it doesn't matter which account now I'm standing on, I can start to derive that, we're getting fractured information, but here's the full story of this person and start to take action on them based upon what we're seeing. I'm gonna jump over here real quick, refresh my tab, see if my global party ID is causing some issues on this guy. So we're not able to see the update we made on the name we just did in Customer 360, but that's what happens when you have to refresh your data right before a demo and everything doesn't always propagate as you want it to. So with that, I always have more slides I can go if anyone has any specific questions or use cases. If they want to see anything else or have specific questions, happy to do so. But that's kind of the overview of Customer 360 Data Manager, some of the use cases, example on how it's being used. And I'll maybe just flip back over here and leave you guys on that slide in case you have any other questions. I did publish a blog ahead of Dreamforce with some of the information we were allowed to talk about at the time, but definitely hit me up if you have any questions or want to talk through any other use cases.
David, this is awesome. Thank you so much, because Customer 360 is definitely one of those bigger things that, like you mentioned at the top, Salesforce is really good about clouding things behind the names and reusing names and all the things, and it's usually more complicated, or it may look more complicated. This, for me at least, simplified what goes into all of this, that it is something that can be tenable.
Yep. Oh, it's been fun getting a chance to jump into it. We're in the early stages of getting enabled on the new audience customer 360 audiences and the CDP offering. So hopefully maybe here in the fall, you guys will let me come back up here on stage and present that, and we can talk through the differences and how the products augment each other. And yeah.
Absolutely, anytime. And I will say for everybody else, while anybody thinks of any questions, I talked at the top in the introduction about filling out the speaker interest form. David was one of the first ones to jump on it because this is something that he's passionate about. It doesn't matter what you're passionate about within Salesforce. We want to hear it. David, I appreciate you jumping in and giving us a little bit of your passion here. This has been super solid.
Well, we only lost 7 people during my session, I think, so that's pretty good.
Well, and they said they had to jump to other meetings, is what it is. So great question from John. What kind of companies need this, i.e. multinationals with legacy issues versus startups?
So really, it's anyone who's got data that's in multiple systems where there's a need to identify a single person. So I think the big thing that that sticks with me is, traditionally we look at things as data. So data points and data elements, and combining our data and finding those data, keep those where data is duplicated, or not really duplicated, but it's represented, and cross-sharing of the data so that you have that single picture. What this really does is it starts to, instead of saying, let's look at it from a data perspective, let's look at it from a person perspective. So if you have people that are in systems in multiple ways, and you don't have a way to identify that single person, then this is a tool to help identify that. As well as if you have multiple systems, especially if you have Commerce Cloud and Service Cloud, and you want to have the ability to pull in ordered data from Commerce Cloud into Service Cloud and show it to agents real time, so that you can see what they're ordering and what their order history has been. This is a mechanism that allows you to pull that information in and help augment that picture. There's definitely, especially even the product team will say this is a little bit left of center. So some of the use cases aren't always obvious. So I talk with, I do the delivery work at DEG, and I talk to our sales guys all the time to say, you're not really going to have a lot of customers who are coming and saying, hey, I need Customer 360 Data Manager, because most of our customers think their data is pretty solid, or if they don't, they're like, well, we know where our data issues are. And this is one of those products where we can come in and have conversations and do proof of concepts, and fast, make a assumption or make a hypothesis, and either fast fail or fast prove out to our customers that, hey, you don't actually realize it, but you're losing a lot of information in your data, and here's why, and now we can show it to you. And it becomes an aha moment for our clients, where they're like, oh, I didn't realize it. We thought we knew that information. And then we're able to help them figure out how now to use the information to make better business decisions. So I think, it's not necessarily multinational, legacy, or startups. It's really all of the above when you have data in lots of systems that you're trying to unify. One of our clients, even in a Marketing Cloud instance, they have, customers, they have people who they're trying to onboard to be resellers, and then they have current resellers, and they're in 3 different data extensions today, and they're not able to really identify, how people have progressed on the journey of being a user to a reseller or a potential reseller. And we're able to start to string together some of that information and give them more data to then do better targeted messaging because of it. All right. Well, Dale, I'll hand it back over to you guys so you can do open question and answers. I'm definitely stick around and happy to jump in if there's other things on this.
Absolutely. Thank you. I mean, again, this is super solid. And I love the answer to that last question of that this can apply to anybody. Doesn't matter the size, doesn't matter the use case. So that's fantastic. Thank you. So we have probably about 15 minutes before I have to shut the line down and get back to work and a client call at 1. But I want to just do kind of a status check with everyone in general. Obviously, we've been doing the work from home thing for months. Some people are back in the office. Some are still from home. How is everybody? Just, I don't mean work-wise. I mean, how is everybody doing? And I can stop recording too.